Shalom guys, so I was asked to do a video about vaccinations and medical kidnapping. So once upon a time we used to live in California. California is very liberal and their vaccination laws are really steep. So they were the first ones to enact the whole mandatory vaccinations. So what that means is that, which I'm sure most of you know, what that means is that a child of school age, or actually any child, has to be vaccinated in order to go into the school system. So children who were already in the school system were fine as long as they didn't hit these markers. So the first marker was kindergarten, the second marker is I think 7th grade, and then you've got a marker for high school. So my son was already in school. I think he was in 1st grade at the time. He was in kindergarten at the time, so he was good. But my daughter was in Head Start, and so she was never going to be able to go to kindergarten. But the way they've written the laws is that you can't enroll your child in daycares, nor can you enroll your child in school without them having been vaccinated. They were no longer accepting the religious vaccination forms, which is what I had always filled out. One sister said that she was able to get it. I don't know how necessarily she got it, but she was able to get her children into the school system in California without having to have avoiding the whole non-vaccination form. They were saying the only way they were going to accept it was that if you had a medical reasons why your child couldn't be vaccinated. So anyways, moving forward, a lot of states have been moving in that direction. Currently, New York is having a measles outbreak, and at first they just removed all the children from the school, but the mayor, it's not of all of New York, it's a specific cities or counties or districts, I don't know which part, that they are saying now unvaccinated children are not allowed in public spaces. So they're not allowed to go to parks, they're not allowed to go to stores, they're not allowed to go to, I guess, amusement facilities. Anyway, they're not allowed to go into public spaces. They're allowed to attend events, so like church events, because the reason why they did that, because I'm sure you guys know that a lot of, in New York there's a high Jewish population, and a lot of Jewish people are not vaccinated. And so by saying that they couldn't go to church, then that meant that, you know, they would be alienating a lot of the Jewish population, and Jews have a big stronghold in New York. So anyways, there's that. There's also the fact that, you know, they keep having all these little outbreaks, and they're saying that, you know, these types of, like, I know measles is one of them. I'm not sure what some of the other ones are, but they're saying that, you know, they have been essentially eradicated, and that now we're having all these outbreaks, which I think that's false media. I think that they're doing it on purpose. I think that, you know, they're just trying to cause a scare and push parents into vaccinating. They've created a lot of laws now where children can go and vaccinate themselves. You know, your child can go and get their own abortion without parental consent. Your child can go get vaccinated without parental consent. And then these pediatricians are now becoming whistleblowers. So I would really suggest that you guys consider who you're taking your child to go see as a pediatrician. I know it's hard, you know, depending on whether you're on Medicaid or Medi-Cal or whatever, or if you have, you know, a hospital or system that is provided for you. You know, I know some people have Kaiser, and you have to stay within Kaiser doctors, and therefore it's hard to be able to go out and afford a private doctor. But I would really suggest that you kind of take the time. I can only speak from Kaiser's standpoint because that's who I have. To take the time to really filter your pediatrician, because these pediatricians are being whistleblowers. I keep seeing more and more cases where, you know, a parent takes their child in to see the pediatrician for X, Y, and Z, and the pediatrician, you know, is giving them hassle or whatever about not being vaccinated, which I know at Kaiser they always have to say it. Like, I know, I just have to say it. I'm like, that's fine, but I have the right to decline. So anyways, you know, so I just read an article about these parents Their child was unvaccinated. They took their child to the hospital because the child had a fever of 105. By the time they left, the child was feeling better and had a fever of 102. Later that night, the child had a fever of 100. The child was, like I said, unvaccinated. The pediatrician was afraid that the child had meningitis, and because the pediatrician had suggested that they go immediately to the emergency room, which they didn't do because the mother's like, well, he's running around, he's feeling better, his fever's gone down, he's no longer at 105, we're not going to the emergency room. The pediatrician called CPS or DSP, whatever they call it, DPS, whatever they call it wherever you live. So the police came that night and knocked on the door to the people's house and, was requesting to take the children or see the children, and the parents declined. They thought it was over, and then later in the middle of the night, like I'm assuming 2 a.m. based upon how the article was stated, didn't really say what time, the SWAT team came in and kicked the door and took the kids, which is medical kidnapping. And that's been a really big thing that's going on right now, is hospitals. Mayo Clinic was in a big one for medically kidnapping this girl. She was in the hospital. The parents didn't like the treatment plan. They didn't like what the doctors were saying. They didn't like what the doctors were doing. They said they were going to take their child somewhere else. And the hospital went and got CPS or whatever involved and took parental rights away from the parents and pretty much had the daughter in the hospital as a prisoner. And they barred their parents from coming to see her anymore, and eventually their parents created some plan to get her out of the hospital. They just was like, she was going for a ride in her wheelchair, and then they just, took off with her, and security came and they hurried and put her in the van and took off. But that's become a big thing, is they're claiming that, people who are not vaccinating their children are neglecting their kids. They're claiming that people that are homeschooling, that's another thing, is they're trying to really push homeschooling parents into a box as well. They started off with trying to make it so that you have to have a bachelor's to homeschool. And then they also are trying to make it so that, homeschooling is a form of neglect, and that, I forgot what the bill is called, but the police can come in and check in on your kids, almost like CPS would come in and check in on your kids to make sure that your children are all right because you're choosing to homeschool. So I say all this to say, you guys be careful out there. I've taken my children out of Babylon. I don't desire to have my children in Babylon. It's comforting to go back to Babylon because you have, creature comforts. You have your family and your friends and, where you used to live and all those convenient things. It's convenient to go down the street and get some fast food. It's convenient to go to Walmart and get everything you need, So it's convenient to have all those things. And it's comfortable to be around your family. But I don't feel safe. When we went back, I took my children to the hospital because there's some things, not that we don't have hospitals here, but there's some things that I just wanted to get checked in on. And the whole time, I was seriously fearful that they would be like, where have your children been? How come your children haven't been seen in 3 years? How come they're not vaccinated? So in the back of my mind, I had this what if they decide that I'm doing something wrong and they decide to take my child, Obviously nothing happened. We're back in Belize where we belong. But my point is that you guys just be aware. Keep an eye on what's going on with vaccinations. Keep an eye on what's going on with homeschooling. Because if you're doing these things, you need to be paying attention. They're seriously trying to back you guys into a corner. Facebook is censoring vaccinations. Facebook is censoring anti-vaxxers. They're censoring groups that are promoting anti-vaxxing, anti-vaccinations. So if you're in a group or the group promotes that kind of thing, then they're almost blacklisting it. Twitter. There's another big one. I think Pinterest is doing it. You also have Google, who I think is following suit. So, it's really getting tight for you guys. And I just want you guys to be mindful. I hate hearing when my brothers and sisters are getting their children taken away and stuff like that. So, With that being said, I love you guys. Y'all, I'm back. I hope that somebody heard what I was saying and starts paying more attention and making sure that they're doing what they need to do to keep their children safe and to keep their children within the parameters, guidelines, religious beliefs of what they feel is right, and not allowing the government to come in and take over and take control. All right, love you guys. Y'all, I'm back. I hope you're having a great Sabbath. Shabbat shalom.